Hey guys, Machines and Metal here. Just wanted to show you this hedge trimmer that I found on the side of the road on Junkday. It's a Stihl model HL 75K. It's a two-stroke single cylinder engine. That recoil is actually off of a Stihl weed eater trimmer. The FS80 is a trimmer, so someone has taken that recoil and put it onto this machine, but it'll hopefully work. I've noticed that the cover has been removed, it's loose. There's a screw there holding it on, but the ignition coil is gone, the wire. So I'm gonna get a coil and then I will follow up with an install and a cleanup, and we'll see if we can get this thing running. And if it runs, I'll do a quick sharpen. I'll show you how to sharpen one of these, and then we'll put it on Craigslist and we'll make a little bit of profit. Alright guys, so here's our Stihl HL 75K Hedge trimmer that we picked up on Junkday, and I ordered a coil, an ignition coil for it off the internet. It's right here. I got it from a website called Amazon. It's a kind of similar to eBay, but it's not an auction site, but you can buy anything you want on there. And I found this ignition coil for about $11, included shipping, the next day. I don't know how that's possible in the world, but anyways. So I've got the cover off, and you can see that right there the ignition coil is missing from this machine. Someone's removed it. So I'm going to install the coil I picked up, and we're going to see if this thing makes any noise. So there's two spots on the flywheel here. These are the magnetic, the generator magnetics that make the coil create a charge to spark the spark plug. And what you have to do is put a gap in between these two magnets and these two pickups. There needs to be a gap between there. There is a measurement that you can use, or if you're old school, you can use a piece of business card. It seems to work just well. So what you do is you slip the piece of business card in like that, and then you take your coil. It's magnetic, so it's going to kind of want to stick in there, and you slip your coil up to its mounts in between like that, making sure that the piece of business card you've got is sandwiched between the coil and the magnet. And then what you want to do is install your two bolts that hold this whole thing together. And hopefully when we pull out that piece of cardboard, there will be a gap between the pickup and the magnet, and the engine will spin freely. Push down on that just a little bit to hold it there. Snug that down. Same thing, snug that down. Like that. Nice and tight. Now, if we pull out this piece of cardboard like that, we should be able to pull this engine over, and the flywheel does not hit the coil. So that's a very good sign. It also makes a bunch of compression I can feel, so that's an even better sign. One thing we can do to see if the new coil works is we can take the spark plug. The coil actually came with a brand new spark plug, but it looks like a piece of crap. So I'm gonna leave the spark plug in here that was in it when I found it. So if you put that there, give it a make sure it's turned on. Give it a pull. We should see a little bit of spark. I saw a spark. I don't know if you did. Hold that there. Watch right there. Sorry guys, I'm trying to make this there. Maybe now you can see it. Lots of spark. So that's a good sign. That means our coil works. One thing you should do when you work on one of these machines that hasn't been running in a long time is you should put a little oil down the cylinder so that the rings are lubricated for its first start if it's been a long time since this thing has run. I've got a little bit of oil here. Just squirt it down in there. Might smoke a little bit when you start it, but it's good for the motor to have a little bit of lube. All right, so what we're going to do is put this spark plug back in, the original spark plug. I don't really like the one that came with the kit. It also came with a kill wire, but there's a kill wire already there that I think probably worked fine. So we will reuse the kill wire that we've got. No sense in changing it. Just going to squeeze the spade together so it grabs a little bit better. Like that. Connect our spark plug lead like that. Now the gas tank is bone dry. So what we're going to do is we're going to take off the air filter. Like that. Take the air filter off. And then I've got a little bit of 50-to-1 two-stroke gas and oil mixed in this squirt bottle. And I'm going to try to dribble a little bit down inside the carburetor like that. And then I'm going to give this thing a couple pulls and see if it makes some noise. So there is a great sign. This thing probably is going to work just fine. It just burned off that squirt of fuel that I put into it. So I'm not going to bother with taking the carburetor apart just yet. I'm going to put some fuel in the tank and see if the primer circuit works. If the primer circuit works, I'm going to just try to run this thing with the fuel that's in the tank that I put in there. And if it runs, we'll give this thing a clean up and I'll show you how to sharpen it. Alright guys, so I've dumped about a half a tank of fresh high octane, so 94 octane, 50-to-1 mixed fuel in here, and I'm gonna try priming this to see if we can get some fuel running through the carburetor and the fuel lines. There we go. I don't know if you can see that in the video, but that bubble's full of fuel now. And it's got a choke lever, but it's broken off. It still works though. So turn on the choke. And with a hedge trimmer, when you start it, you always want to be careful because the end here, if it spins up real fast, the end here will definitely do some damage to whatever you've got it leaning up against. So make sure the end of the hedge trimmer is not leaning on anything special, like your new lawnmower bag. And let's see if we can get this baby running. We've got the choke on, she's primed. So she runs. I think we're gonna let her kind of idle up and warm up a bit and get some fuel through the system and see if she calms down and idles. Okay, so I've had this spark plug out a few times, and every time I try and start this thing with its nice new recoil rope, it floods out. So I'm going to show you, I've just dried it out one more time. And that's it, she's flooded. And you can actually see the fuel on the muffler. And if I pull out the spark plug one more time, I can show you. It's all wet with gasoline. I don't know if you can see that, but if I put a little compressed air on it, you can see the mist fly off of it. And if I put a little compressed air on the cylinder, just mist comes out. So what that tells me is that the carburetor kit is hard as a rock and the needle is stuck full open, and it's just allowing all the gas to flow through the carburetor and into the engine, flooding it out. So what we're going to have to do is take this carburetor off and open it up. Probably replace the diaphragms, give it a cleaning, and then put it back together. So I'm just gonna disconnect the bits and bits. If you let the pressure out of the fuel tank, there's less of a chance that it's going to splurge fuel all over you when you disconnect the fuel hoses. So you got one fuel hose there. We got another fuel hose right there. Snap that baby off. All right. That fuel hose is hard as a rock and crunchy, so we're gonna replace that with some new stuff now. But there's our carburetor. And what we're gonna do is blow it off. So there's two diaphragms on these that go bad. Usually the pump diaphragm is under here. Will stiffen up, no longer will pulse, and you'll see, I'll show you here what we're looking for. Once you get that off, this guy right here is supposed to be soft and pliable, and it is absolutely hard as a rock. So that right there is the reason we're flooding out. There's a second diaphragm on this carburetor. Fuel pump diaphragm right here. And this guy has two little flap valves, one right there and one right there. And these ones aren't as soft rubber as the one on the other side, so these ones last longer. They actually feel okay, but when you buy a carb kit for one of these machines, you get a new fuel pump diaphragm and a new pulse diaphragm. So what I'm going to do is go back to that great website, Amazon, and I'm going to order a replacement carburetor kit for this machine, and we'll pick the video back up when it gets here and I put it together. Okay, so we got a diaphragm. Right there's a new one. And what I've done is just taken this old one off of the carburetor plate, and I'm going to reuse the gasket. So you're just going to peel that old one off, the garbage one, and then take the gasket, put it back on. There's our new diaphragm there. It's nice and soft as opposed to the left. Oops, sorry, I got it backwards. It goes like that. It's nice and soft. Actually, the way you're supposed to do this is first blow up the carburetor. Then take your gasket. Put your gasket on the carburetor like that. And then, sorry, I had it upside down. And then take your new diaphragm, put it with the metal face down onto the needle, like that. And then take your primer base, put it on top. Now this had 4 bolts, 4 screws. 2 of them went first, like that. And then the other 2 held the primer bubble on top of the base. So these 2 need to be snug down first. that. Then we've got our primer cover and bubble that sits on top, like that. Snug those down. I'm going to go ahead and reuse the fuel pump diaphragm. That was the other one I showed you, the one attached to the bottom here, because it does look like it's going to work, and if it works, why mess with it, right? So same thing, it just goes back on the base of the carb. You've got a screw like that. And there you go. There's your carburetor with a new diaphragm in it. So what I'm going to do now is I have to change this fuel line right there. That's the one that broke off because it's old and dry and brittle. So actually they're both old and dry and brittle. I think it's probably a good idea if I change them both. Hang tight for 1 second. I'm going to rearrange here so you can watch this. So these fuel lines being old, this one and that one, being old as the carburetor diaphragm that you saw me replace a little while ago, are hard as a rock. And this one, it broke. It's just stiff hard plastic. So what we're going to do is pop these grommets out and replace the hoses attached to them. You gotta kind of be gentle when you do this, because you don't want to damage them to where they leak. But if you pull them out, like that, there's one right there. That's your return line, because there's no fuel filter stuck to the end of it. What we're gonna do is take some new fuel line like this, and we're gonna reuse the grommet, and we're gonna push this fuel line through this grommet like this. Just gonna push it through. I think this fuel line's a little tiny bit bigger than the stuff that we had when we started, but at least it'll make a nice tight seal. It's starting to come through. So this is your return line. It doesn't have to be that long. You just want it long enough so that it protrudes into the tank. About that long. And then you want to take your old piece and just kind of measure it, use it for example, and cut it so that these two are about the same length. Now you got to take your return line and push it back into your fuel tank. Easier said than done. Right, so we got the fuel lines installed. Sorry I had to skip ahead there. It took me a little bit of wrestling to get these old grommets to agree with me. But I got two new fuel lines, the return line, the pickup line, and I also installed a new one of these, a new fuel filter down inside, because this one, again, it's as rotten as can be from sitting in bad gas forever, just like that carb kit. So what we're going to do now is just clip this fuel line off right there. The one on the left side is our pickup. So it has the fuel filter on the end of it. So it is going to be the one that connects to the bottom of the carburetor body, because that's how it works. The fuel gets sucked through the bottom, through the fuel pump valves, and then into the bubble and out the top. So we're just going to take take our newly installed fuel lines, just open that up because it's closed from being crimped. So that's our pickup line. So it's going to want to go on the pickup. And then this is our return line, which is going to want to go to right there. Sorry if you can't see this, but try and do it this way. Maybe you can see what I'm doing. Just going to snap that hose onto that barb like that. And then this carburetor sits on the machine this way, like that. And then that is our throttle cable right there. So that works. Then we've got a gasket. Then we've got a plate with another gasket. And we've got our choke box. Now that's broken. There used to be a little tab there, but it's gone, but it still functions. So we're just gonna go with it. I'm excited to hear this thing run. So then we put our two little carburetor nuts back on. One there, and one there. Tighten those babies down. Just like that. You don't want to go too tight. Okay, now we're going to try priming her. Until we start feeling it suck fuel. Oh, there it is. You can actually hear it priming well. Got all the air bubbles out. We probably should throw our spark plug back in. Hook our lead back up. So let's try this again. Now she's hopefully not going to flood herself out. She's got some new parts. Sounds good. Turn that choke off. So it sounds like the high mixture circuit on the carburetor is plugged up, so we're gonna have to take it apart again and clean it out, but you get a general idea. She's gonna work out. It's gonna be great. So I'm just gonna show you real quick how to change the recoil rope on a Stihl two-stroke recoil. This one is really short. It's only about 10 inches long. It makes the machine difficult to start. So bear with me for a sec. I'm just going to pop this recoil off, and then I'm going to show you how to replace the rope on it. Alright. So there's our recoil. Let's put this out of the way. Try and show you how this works. So, if you see, that rope is only, like I said, about 10 inches long, maybe a little longer in it. Not easy to start a machine with a recoil like that. So in order to change it, what you want to do is take the handle apart like that and cut the old rope off like that, and then let the rope get sucked into the recoil like that, so all the spring tension is gone. So there's your handle, that's the insert that sits inside. Now what you want to do is take out the drum. Be careful when you pull it out because there's a spring underneath. You don't want to hook the spring and pull the spring out. I'll show you in a sec. So it comes apart like that. That's the spring I'm talking about. You want to make sure that that spring stays wrapped up inside, otherwise you'll have to rewrap it. It's a pain in the butt. So there's your rope. You unwind it, and we want to pull that right out. So we have a little knot in the recoil drum. And you pull the rope out, and there's what's left of your rope. So you throw that out, and then you're going to take some new rope. I happen to have 3 feet of number 3 size, which is, I think, a little bit thinner than what was on there. Probably more appropriate because this is a pretty small drum. We're going to be able to fit more of this rope on this drum, and the more rope the better, until you start to overfill the drum and it hits the insides of the recoil. We don't want to fill it that far. So what we're going to do is, there's a hole in there we pulled the old one out of. We're going to feed the new rope inside, and we're just going to work the tip of it out like that. So now you've got your rope passed through your recoil, and then you're going to tie a little knot at the end, like that. Right at the end. You don't want it at the very end, but you know, maybe 3/8 of an inch or so from the end. And then what you're going to do is you're going to pull it nice and tight, like that. And now you need to work the knot into that groove there. So it'll actually fit if you turn it in the right direction, put a little bit of pressure on it with a screwdriver. It'll fit right down inside, just like that. Careful not to damage it. It doesn't have to be perfectly installed in there, but just out of the way. So you can see now we've got our rope. Now what you want to do is take a quick look at how this goes back together. That's where the puller comes out, so it goes like that. That tells you that this rope wraps this direction. And what you want to do is put a few rope wraps on there until the rope has filled the recoil, which you can see it's overfilled. So I'm going to back it off a roll to about there, and there's actually a little notch, a little groove that you can use to hook the rope in, like that. Then what you want to do is reinstall this recoil and spring into this housing. You can see there's a notch there. That spring catches that notch. So when you put this in, it has a recoil spring to it. And what you want to do is just turn it around half a revolution, whatever you need, to pull that rope through like that. Now this is going to naturally want to pull back, and if you've done it too tight, it'll pull this rope right back in and you'll have to redo all the work you just did. So keep your hand on there. Don't let it spin out. Put the screw back in. Tighten it down. And give your recoil a test. So that's good. So we've got almost 3 feet worth of recoil, and you can see right there it starts to overfill. So what you want to do is slip your handle back on. That's the insert to the handle. And now you just want to pull this out to where the drum is full and not overflowing. So it's going to be right there. So you can see all the rope is inside the drum. It's not rubbing, it's not catching. Then what you want to do is cinch this handle down to where you've got just enough rope, and you can see we have about 10 inches, maybe a foot extra. what we're going to do is we're going to tie a knot now. Right at the end. Just like that. And then we're going to cut the extra rope off. Just like that. We're going to take our lighter and we're going to just burn the end so it doesn't unravel. Just like that. Let that go inside. Let that go inside. And now you've got a new pull cord that's about 2.5 feet long. Way more than I had before, and enough to get this thing started. So now you put your recoil back together. Don't forget the cable on that bolt there for this particular machine. There's our second bolt, and the third bolt's part of the cover. There's the cover there, so you don't need to put the third bolt on until you reinstall the cover. So I'm going to bolt this back down and see if we can get this baby running. Okay guys, so it's been a couple days. I did some battle with this carburetor and I haven't really gotten anywhere. It's not working out. So rather than spend 2 or 3 hours screwing around with it, went to my new favorite website, Amazon, and I've ordered this replacement carburetor for the machine. It's right there. It also came with some new fuel line, which is nice. A couple of different air filters, actually the pre-filter and the air filter. It came with a couple new fuel tank grommets, and oh, that's for another job. And it also came with extra fuel filters, extra gaskets, a spark plug, and a couple extra primer bubbles. So we got a lot of stuff here. This cost I think about $26 Canadian, and that is shipped from wherever it came from. I assume overseas. It took about 4 days, 3 days. The local Stihl dealer wanted about $100 for one of these. I know this isn't an official Zama or Walbo or whatever, but it's the next best thing. So what we're going to do is we're going to just simply remove this carburetor and install that one. I've already replaced fuel line, so we don't need to mess with the hose or anything like that. This should be a quick switch, and we'll see if this baby runs. Alright guys, so I'm just going to change this carburetor now. A buddy of mine dropped by and he's playing cameraman, so I'll actually have a good camera view of what I'm doing this time instead of me trying to hold the thing or sticking it on a tripod. So we're just going to change this carburetor and we're going to give this thing a try to start and see what happens. So Stihl puts a couple of 8mm nuts to hold on carburetor, and you've got your air box, and you've got your plate, and you've got carburetor right there with 2 fuel lines. You don't want to mix these fuel lines up, so make sure that you remember where they came from. So there goes 1, there goes 2, that's your bottom one, and on the back side there's a little throttle cable. It just drops down inside that slot. Pull that baby off like that. And then we've got our brand new Amazon.com carburetor. Excited to see what happens. There's a gasket on the back side, which is shitty. Pardon that. So what we'll do is we'll use the new gasket that came. There's 2 of them. The one with the hole in it, because there's a hole down inside there, pulse port hole, and if you look on the back of the carburetor, you've got a pulse port hole. So you need to line the hole up with the hole in the paper gasket and the block on the carburetor, or this won't work. So we'll slip that on like that, and we've got our 2 fuel lines. our bottom fuel line like so, and our upper fuel line like so, and then on the back side you've got your throttle cable, which is actually a little bit frayed, I just noticed. It'll work. So we have throttle cable hooked up, and then we've got a front gasket like that, our plate, and our airbox. And we got the two nuts. Let's get them started by hand. Doesn't help that I've got size 12 hands with this stuff. Alright. The airbox is back on. That's probably the fastest carburetor change you've ever seen. Now we're going to give her some primes. See the bubbles filling up with fuel. That's a good sign. And now we're going to take her outside and we're going to fire it up. See if the new carburetor made all the difference. So we'll turn on our choke. Nothing yet. That sounded promising. Nope. So it's idling a little fast. It's going to need a couple of carb adjustments back here with these adjuster screws, but I would say that's a success. This thing runs like brand new. We'll give her a good cleanup and put her on Craigslist for sale. Alright, so we got our hedge trimmer cutting head in the vise, just like that. And what we're going to do is take our handy dandy little finger file right there, belt sander, and we're going to show you how we sharpen one of these things. We're not going to do the whole thing, I'm just going to do a few of the teeth so you get the idea, because I really want to get this video posted. So we'll start right there. It's a good little spot. Basically, you file each tooth one at a time, just ever so slightly. Sorry, the camera's having trouble focusing. And what you want to do is come up with a little tiny bit of a burr. You can hear it back there. And yeah, that's how you sharpen one of these hedge trimmers. So this thing actually already has a buyer. I posted it yesterday on Craigslist. And tomorrow someone wants to come and pick it up. So we're going to sharpen her up and move it on to its new home and start the next project. Thanks for watching.